On the security camera, two people walk into a Bangkok hotel together. It is the 1st of November, 2014. A woman and a man, close, unremarkable, one more couple among the thousands the city's nightlife produces every night of the year. Only one of them walks back out. The man leaves alone sometime later, carrying a large bag. And here's the detail that would stay with everyone who worked this case. A bellboy at the hotel would later say the bag was so heavy that it took two people to lift it. 5 days after that, and more than 100 kilometers to the west, a red suitcase weighed down with stones was pulled from the Mae Klong River. Inside it were the remains of the woman who had walked into that hotel and never walked out. This is the story of Laxami Manochat, known to everyone as Pook. It is the story of the man who killed her and of the almost 8 years it took across 3 countries, 2 arrest warrants, and a fight that went all the way to the European Court of Human Rights to finally bring him into a Thai courtroom. Because this case is not really about how easily a life can be taken. It is about how long and how far justice sometimes has to travel to catch up. Let's lay it out precisely and with respect for the woman at the center of it. The setting is Bangkok, and more specifically the world of its nightlife economy, the go-go bars and entertainment complexes around Sukhumvit Road in the district known as Nana. It is one of the most famous nightlife zones in Asia, a dense grid of neon and music and bars that runs on a constant flow of foreign visitors. For the men who pass through, it is entertainment, a holiday, a few nights of a certain kind of freedom. For the women who work in it, it is a job, often the best-paying one available to someone from a poor province with a family to support. That asymmetry is the quiet engine of the whole district, and it is the reason the people most exposed to danger there are almost never the visitors. They are the women. It is worth being clear-eyed about that vulnerability because it is structural, not incidental. A woman working in that economy often comes from a poor rural province, sends much of what she earns back to her family, and operates with almost none of the protections the rest of us take for granted. Her work is stigmatized, which makes her less likely to go to the police. Her clients are transient foreigners who can be in another country within hours. She frequently goes off alone, at night, with a man she has just met, to a private room where there are no witnesses. Every one of those factors, documented for decades by researchers who study violence against sex workers around the world, stacks the odds against her. Predators understand this arithmetic instinctively. It is precisely why this population, in Bangkok and in every comparable district on Earth, is targeted so much more often than the tourists who pass through unharmed. Laxami Manochat was 27 years old. She worked in that world, based out of the Nana entertainment area. But that is a description of her circumstances, not a summary of her life, and it is important to hold on to the difference. She was a daughter. Her mother is a central figure in how this story ends, and she was a mother herself. She had a daughter of her own. Whatever else she was a woman with people who depended on her and who loved her and who would spend years waiting for an answer about what had happened to her. We are going to keep her at the center of this, not the suitcase, because it would be easy to let a case like this collapse into a single grim object and forget that there was a person first. The man was Kenneth Looker. He was British, in his early 50s, and by any outward measure he was successful. He had grown up in England, and he had built a comfortable, moneyed international life. He owned a hotel on the Spanish island of Ibiza. He kept a holiday home in Thailand, in an upmarket area of the seaside resort town of Hua Hin, several hours south of Bangkok. He was a regular visitor to the country. He was, in the language later used to describe him, a businessman, a man with property on 2 continents and the freedom to move easily between them. Hold on to that contrast because it runs through everything that follows. On one side, a woman working the bars of Nana to support a mother and a daughter. On the other, a British businessman with a hotel in Ibiza and a holiday home on the Thai coast. When their paths crossed on the night of the 1st of November, 2014, the gap between them was not just circumstantial. It was a gap in power, in money, and most importantly for what came next, in the ability to disappear. That night, according to the account pieced together by Thai police and reported by outlets including CNN, AFP, and the Bangkok Post, Looker was photographed with Laxami leaving a go-go bar in the Nana nightlife district. The two of them then went to a nearby hotel. Security camera footage captured them entering together. It is the last confirmed footage of Laxami Manochat alive. What happened inside that hotel room is not something we are going to reconstruct in detail, both because the full detail belongs to the court record and because there is no dignity to be found in dwelling on it. What the evidence established is enough. Sometime in that room, Laxami was killed, and then, in the hours that followed, her body was concealed. The physical trail the case left behind is what makes it so stark, and it is worth walking through carefully, because this is the part that would eventually become the backbone of the prosecution. The security footage showed both of them going in, and then showed only Looker coming out, alone, carrying that large, heavy bag. A bellboy at the hotel noticed the weight of it. He would later describe it as so heavy it took two people to carry. A hotel cleaner, going into the room afterward, found the bedsheet stained with blood. And when Laxami's body was eventually recovered and examined, forensic analysis found Looker's DNA underneath her fingernails, a small, terrible detail that speaks to a struggle, to a woman who fought. Her body was found on the 6th of November, 2014, 5 days after she was last seen alive. It had been placed inside a red suitcase. The suitcase had been weighed down with stones, and it had been dumped into the Mae Klong River near the town of Kanchanaburi in western Thailand, well away from the Bangkok hotel where she had last been seen. The body had been dismembered. We will state that plainly, once, and leave it there. The stones were meant to keep the suitcase down, and with it, the truth. Neither stayed hidden. The choice of the Mae Klong River is itself telling. Kanchanaburi sits well to the west of Bangkok, a drive of a couple of hours. Moving a body that far is not panic, it is effort. It means transport, distance, and a decision to put as much ground as possible between the killing and the place the truth might surface. It is the same instinct as the stones in the suitcase, an attempt to make the evidence sink, literally and figuratively, far from where anyone would think to look. What its recovery shows is how difficult that is to actually achieve. Rivers give things back, suitcases surface, and the further a body is moved, the more chances there are to be seen doing the moving. From that discovery, the investigation moved quickly to a suspect. The CCTV placed Looker with Laxami. The bellboy and the cleaner placed a blood-soaked scene in a body-sized bag with him. The DNA under her nails placed him in direct physical contact with her in her final moments. On the 28th of January 2015, the Kanchanaburi Provincial Court issued an arrest warrant for Looker, the charge, in the language of the warrant, covering murder and the hiding, moving, or destroying of a body in order to conceal the death or its cause. But by the time that warrant was issued, Shane Looker was already gone. And this is where the case stops being a Thai murder investigation and becomes something much larger, an international manhunt that would grind on for years. After the killing, Looker did not flee the country immediately. Instead, according to reporting, he laid low for weeks at his holiday home in Hua Hin, hiding in plain sight in the same country where the search for him was beginning. Then, rather than risk an airport, he took a train across the border into Malaysia. From there, he made his way out of the region entirely, all the way back to Europe, to Spain. He had the means, the passport, and the property to vanish into a comfortable life on the other side of the world. For a while it worked. Think about what that head start represented. A woman had been killed and dismembered in Bangkok, and the man the evidence pointed to was able to simply travel home, first to a Thai resort town, then across a land border, then across the planet, and settle back into his life. That is the asymmetry made real. The victim had no such options. The man accused of taking her life had every one of them. For more than 2 years, Looker remained beyond reach. Then, in June 2017, the international arrest warrant caught up with him. He was detained by Spanish authorities on the island of Ibiza, the same island where he owned a hotel, arrested by the Guardia Civil acting on the warrant out of Thailand. He was at last in custody. But being in custody in Spain and standing trial in Thailand were two very different things, separated by one of the most exhausting legal battles a fugitive can wage, the fight against extradition. Looker fought it hard, and he fought it for years. Extradition from a European country to Thailand is not automatic, and it is not simple. There were legal concerns to be argued over the conditions he might face, over the fact that the crime he was accused of could, in theory, carry the death penalty in Thailand. His legal team contested his removal at every level. The process dragged on, through the Spanish courts and beyond, consuming years of hearings and appeals while, in Thailand, a mother and a daughter waited. The fight went all the way to the European Court of Human Rights. It is worth understanding why a case like this can consume so many years in the courts of a country thousands of kilometers from where the crime happened. Extraditing someone from Europe to Thailand runs headfirst into one of the deepest divides in international law. Much of Europe has abolished the death penalty and treats it as a fundamental human rights line, while Thailand retains it. A European court cannot simply hand a person over to face possible execution or conditions it considers inhumane without violating its own principles. So every one of those points becomes something to be litigated, argued, and appealed, and a determined defendant with resources can stretch that process out for years. That is not a loophole so much as the system working as designed, slowly and deliberately, to make sure no one is sent to a fate the sending country would consider unjust. In this case, it meant Looker could contest his removal again and again, while the family in Thailand waited. And on the 25th of May, 2021, that court brought his efforts to an end, clearing the final obstacle to his extradition. Crucially, his removal to Thailand came with formal assurances that he would not face the death penalty and that he would not be mistreated. Those guarantees are often the price of extradition from a country that has abolished capital punishment to one that has not. With them in place, the last door closed. In July 2021, nearly 7 years after Laxami Manochat's body was pulled from the Mae Klong River, Shane Looker was extradited from Spain and flown back to Thailand to finally stand trial. Even then, he didn't go quietly toward the truth. Looker had, throughout, denied any involvement. At one point, he had insisted, in the most absolute terms, that he had categorically nothing to do with the woman's murder. For years, that was his position, complete denial. That position did not survive contact with the courtroom. Now to the outcome, the part of this story that matters most, and the part I promised we would lay out precisely. Because a true crime story that stops before the verdict is only half a story. The whole point is what the justice system did with the evidence in the end. On Tuesday, the 31st of May, 2022, the case came to its conclusion at the Kanchanaburi Provincial Court. Looker did not appear in person in the courtroom. He watched the proceedings remotely, by teleconference, from prison. And in that hearing, after years of denial, everything changed. According to a court official, after the defendant was examined by the judge, he finally confessed to all of the charges filed against him. The man who had insisted for years that he had nothing to do with Laxami's death admitted, at last, that he had killed her. The court found Kenneth Looker guilty, and here the sentencing carries a detail that is important to understand precisely because it explains a number that might otherwise seem shockingly low. The court's starting point was a 16-year prison sentence, but under Thai law, a genuine confession can earn a reduction, and the court cut that sentence in half to 8 years, with no suspension of the term. So the headline figure that went around the world was 8 years, but the sentence the court considered the crime to actually warrant was 16. The 8 years was the confession discount. It is a mechanism that exists in many legal systems, meant to reward defendants who spare the court a full contested trial, and in cases like this, spare a grieving family the ordeal of one. Whether 8 years feels like enough for the killing and dismemberment of a young mother is a question the number alone cannot answer, but the record is clear that the court valued the crime itself at double that. There is a hard tension buried in that discount, and it is worth naming. A confession, especially one that comes only after years of denial and a failed fight against extradition, can feel like a cynical final move, an admission made not out of remorse, but because the evidence had become impossible to beat, time to harvest the sentence reduction. And yet the reduction still serves a purpose the law values. It produced certainty. Because Looker confessed, there was no contested trial in which Laxami's mother and daughter would have had to sit through days of forensic testimony, no risk of an acquittal on a technicality, no appeal dragging the case out for years more. The confession closed the case for good. Families are sometimes willing to trade years off a sentence for the finality of never having to wonder whether the verdict will hold. Whether that trade was worth it here is not for us to decide, but it is the logic the number reflects. The court did not stop at the prison term. It also ordered Looker to pay compensation to the family Laxami left behind. He was ordered to pay just under 10 million baht, around $300,000 plus interest, to Laxami's mother. And he was ordered to pay a further 2 million baht, plus interest, to Laxami's daughter, the child who had lost her mother when she was far too young to understand why. No sum of money returns a mother to a daughter or a daughter to a mother. But the court's order did something that matters in its own right. It formally recognized, in law, exactly who had been harmed, not an abstraction, not the victim. A specific woman with a specific mother and a specific child, both of whom the court named as the people owed a debt that could never truly be paid. Step back and consider the shape of the whole thing. A killing in a Bangkok hotel room in November 2014, a body in a weighted suitcase in a river 5 days later. An arrest warrant in early 2015 that found only an empty holiday home, its owner already fled across a land border and then across the world. 2 years of freedom in Spain. An arrest in Ibiza in 2017, 4 more years of fighting extradition all the way to the European Court of Human Rights, a flight back to Thailand in 2021, a confession and a conviction in 2022. From the discovery of Laxami's body to the moment a court finally recorded that Shane Looker had killed her, nearly 8 years had passed. That is the real subject of this case, not the horror of what was done, though it was horrific. It is the sheer distance that justice had to cover, and the sheer effort it took to close it. A man with money and a European passport very nearly walked away from a murder in Thailand simply by going home. He was stopped only because a warrant crossed borders, because a European police force acted on it, because prosecutors and courts on 2 continents kept pushing for years, and because, in the end, a Thai court would not let a suitcase in a river be the last word. The system was slow, it was cumbersome. It required assurances and appeals and international cooperation and patience measured in years, but it did not stop. And that persistence is the only reason this story has an ending at all. In the end, though, the ending belongs to Pook. Laxami Manochat was 27. She worked the bars of Nana to look after the people she loved. She had a mother who outlived her and a daughter who will grow up carrying this. She was not a suitcase, and she was not a headline, and she was not defined by the last man she ever met. She was a person, and for a while it looked as though the world might let the man who killed her simply disappear. It didn't. It took 8 years, 3 countries, and a courtroom she never got to see, but her name is in the record now as the person who was wronged, and his is in it as the man who did it. If this case stayed with you, the years it took, the distance it covered, the question of whether the justice at the end of it was really justice enough, tell me in the comments. We cover cases from Thailand and across Southeast Asia carefully and from the record every week. If that's the kind of storytelling you want more of, subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.